Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, March 15th, the Ides of March, 2017. Another sort of snow day here. Once again, Virginia comes through for the kids. No more snow than we got yesterday, and in fact, we didn't even get all that much yesterday, but we're off from school again anyway, which I'm not complaining about. It's a damn sight better than last night's situation, which had us starting on a 2-hour delay, and you know what can happen during a 2-hour delay. We have the insane asylum going on here, but not happening today. We got lucky on that one, and now with our new morning schedule, it really would have put us off track to do the 2-hour delay thing today, so we got a break. It's just too damn cold. Everything was melting and refreezing last night, I guess, in certain parts of the county. One of the benefits of the county-wide school system, we benefit from the places where they don't plow all that well and there's not good drainage. And so when there's melting and refreezing, the whole place closes down again. We're okay around here. So at least one of us got out of the house for work today. But the kids are at home, and you will hear the consequent background noise, no doubt. Plus, there's a loose tooth in the house, running around like crazy, and we just can't get a net over him. And, well, okay, so that may come out at any time, too, and that may produce shrieks at some point. But I feel okay. I'm comforted by the fame that BBC Dad has gained from his home life situation. If he can get away with it, then so can I. Of course, I don't have cute video to go along with it, so maybe that's it. I don't know. Anyway, did you see this thing? I tweeted this around this morning. If you're listening live and you want to check out the early morning Twitter feed, saw a fun thing here labeled, and I think correctly, here is the greatest GIF ever, and it's a cartoon GIF of BBC Dad's two kids marching around, having a good time. The hero of that video, by the way, the two kids. Oh, there is follow-up on that. By the way, it turns out that is a mom in the video and not a nanny, and so that's good news. That mystery solved. We already hear that there's some difficulty going on in the background. The big news this morning, there are hackers on Minecraft, and they're ruining my son's experience. Apparently we'll be hearing all about that in the background today. His favorite expressions, of course, when that happens, is to scream, "Bruh!" and boy, and hacker, and so we'll hear a lot of that too. I'm not really sure what any of that means, and I'm not even sure that there are any real actual hackers on Minecraft. Maybe those of you with experience can let me know, and we can figure this out. I think it's just anybody who beats them is a hacker. It's like, that's the way it seems to fall here. All right, let's see. It turns out there's some other news today. Trump did something with taxes, and I'm not sure which side I'm on yet. Last night you had to divide up into one of two teams. Either the team that said, this is the most important thing ever, you can see that Trump is not nearly as rich as he says, and that he's taking advantage of all kinds of crazy loopholes. And then there's another side that says the taxes don't show that anything terribly wrong. He's paying a considerable amount of money in taxes, although he's lowered his effective rate. And so, therefore, discussing the taxes, which, of course, we wanted to get hold of so that we could have a look around and see whether he was drawing any income from Russia or any other foreign sources, I guess, and any illicit sources here in the United States. Well, I guess that's back on the table, too. But still, people were sure that we were falling into some kind of trap set by Trump himself. I don't even know what to think about this. Apparently, the idea was, it was David K. Johnston, by the way, who was on the Rachel Maddow show. I didn't see the segment. I can't comment on the segment. Maybe Greg saw it. Maybe Joan saw it. I don't know. Maybe you saw it. You can tell me what you thought about it, and I'd be happy to pass that on. But apparently, a copy of Trump's returns, or a summary of the returns from 2005, shows up in David K. Johnson's mailbox. Donald Trump doesn't believe it. He tweets this morning. That and Snoop Dogg. He's very angry about that, and Snoop Dogg did something. And so, importantly, it has the presidential attention today. And it showed that he paid some taxes in 2005. Importantly, as people pointed out, the summary pages that David had were stamped client copy, which would seem to indicate that they came from the client. And that's, of course, Donald Trump. There was another client listed on the page, Melania Knavs, who's, of course, we now call Melania Trump. I don't know. Maybe it means she never changed her name at that point. I don't know. At that point, she hadn't done it. And so he paid about an effective 24% tax rate on $150 million of income, which is nice. It's a tidy sum, but for a guy who says he's got billions and billions in assets, that's a pretty poor performance in terms of income for the year. I don't know if that really matters. I'm not so sure that it matters in terms of the Russia story, and that I doubt very much that anywhere on Donald Trump's returns in any year does it ever say illegal Russia money. And if it does, well, he's not very smart. Maybe that's the reason he's keeping the IRS on the audit front. I imagine that falls to his control now. I imagine he imagines it falls into his control. But somehow we haven't managed to end the audit. And all right, so we can move on to other subjects, I guess, like the fact that it's nearing day 50. That puts us 20 days past the ultimate defeat of ISIS, and everything's looking up. So, Greg, what else is new, if anything?
I don't know. It snowed here. What happened with
you? It snowed the other day, and it's still cold, so...
I got about maybe 14 inches or so. It was pretty snowed in yesterday. Basically spent yesterday tweeting pictures of the cardinals that were in my backyard. They were kind of pretty.
I saw some of those pictures. I saw the Juncos.
Yeah, and I was playing with
cousins down here.
Photoshop and kind of enhancing the cardinals so it would stand out a little bit redder.
Yes, I thought that was interesting.
Against the white snow. But, that's what you do when you really don't, when you can't leave the house. It was coming down pretty good and the wind was up.
Yeah.
So this morning, it's mostly cleaned up, but there was a layer of ice from the sleet, so it's going to be quite slick. Anyway, that was here. And during all of this, of course, I did watch a little bit of the Maddow show yesterday.
Okay, great.
About the taxes. I was frankly bored about 5 minutes through.
Yeah, well.
First commercial break was at 8:13. It was so boring that I was counting when the commercial breaks were, or 9:13. David K. Johnson was on. Always good to listen to him. But basically, there's not much there. It's just that we don't know where the income is from because it's only the first 2 pages.
Yeah.
So without knowing where the income is from, doesn't mean much of anything. It gave Trump a chance to pre-butt it because he had put out, oh, this is nothing. Look, I pay taxes. You guys are all wet. Stop looking at my taxes. Even before the show, which made everybody think, well, Trump probably leaked it. And then David K. Johnson said, well, for all I know, I got this from Trump.
Yeah.
So that's fine. I mean, and it's completely irrelevant and unimportant. But let me start with a Jeet here. Here, Jeet. Short
Are you sure
piece
it's not
here.
A distraction? Make sure.
Where he says, look, part of the reason people are disappointed in the Rachel Maddow scoop is they desperately want a silver bullet solution, and that's a mistake. He talks about in German, there's a help distinction between a war of exhaustion and a knockout war.
Okay. Well,
and I can't pronounce the German, so I won't even try. I mean, I know people can, but I can't.
Okay.
With Trump, we're definitely facing a war of exhaustion, a long, hard siege where he has to be hit on all sides, not just a one-path victory. Says here, G.
Focus on the hair. That's my advice.
Trump's finances are incredibly opaque, especially considering he's president and making decisions that will affect his business. The more we know about Trump's finances, the better. The picture's still filling out, and in the long run, the way forward is political. Hit Trump on unpopular policies, which we're going to get to, basically healthcare, and self-dealing, try to win Congress for Dems in 2018. That's the strategy, right? So that's pretty clearly stated. And if you see the struggle against Trump as a siege, it makes little sense to describe any one battle or tactic as a distraction. That's very important.
I'm for that.
Every time I hear, oh, Trump did this, it's a distraction. No, it's not. It's an accumulated pile is what it is.
He is an accumulated pile. I agree.
Just saying. So when Trump sets tax policy, it's good to have his taxes to make the arguments. Like, for example, Elizabeth Drew says, on the basis of a 2005 tax return, and this is from a Box story, how Trump would be unusually helped by his own tax proposals to get rid of the alternate minimum tax, for example. He'd be paying a whole lot less.
Yes.
If that didn't exist. That's nice. But the key story there is, where does his revenue come from? Since we don't know, it's not much of a story. And the fact that it's not much of a story is not much of a story. You know, it was nice. It was entertainment on television. So what? Don't get too upset about it. The real issue is healthcare and his relationship with Russia. And it still is today.
Okay. And she didn't ruin it at all.
At all.
Oh,
Not in.
Okay, good. Phew. That's
so,
nice.
this morning. Morning Consult, Politico poll, GOP plan to encourage health coverage unpopular with voters. I mean, it's not that unpopular. They get the same, this is interesting. They get the idea, and there's more in the Kaiser poll, which I think is much better. And I'll do that in a minute from Nick Gorovich. But the, idea that, people are going to look at the healthcare proposal and say, okay, I instantly know what's going on here and I'm going to take sides is ridiculous. It's always been ridiculous. It's hard enough for the health policy wonks to keep track of what the heck is in these healthcare policies. You can't expect normal consumers to simply look at it and say, oh yeah, I read the 87,000 page proposal along with the 3,700 different takes on it from left and right, synthesized it all, and now I have an opinion, so when you call me for a poll, I'll be able to say yes or no. That's really not how it works. What it does show
true.
Is that it's not particularly popular. So here are some of the numbers. This is from Nick Gorovich. I just added that at the bottom of your Skype list so you can follow along.
Take a look.
And that'll help Scott Anderson too, and he puts together the show summary later. New Kaiser healthcare tracking poll shows public paying attention. I mean, that's really the important thing.
All right.
Right? More say GOP repeal bill will make things worse on coverage and costs. And that's the important thing. So, the number of people, more say the ACA replacement plan will make things worse than better on coverage, costs, and pre-existing conditions.
That seems to be right.
Right? So the number of people who have health insurance will decrease, most people say. Increased costs, most people say. We're talking about 48% here. A quarter don't know. And a quarter think that it'll be just fine or better. And those are the Republican core Trump voters. Remember, they're a very small minority compared to everybody else. Higher deductibles, 41% say so. And fewer protections for people with pre-existing conditions. Well, about 45% think it's about the same, and 32% say it'll be fewer, and 15% say it'll be more. That's an interesting one because if you lose your coverage altogether, it's worse. But if you were able to obtain it, then it stays about the same. And most people think that this will help the rich, but not anybody else, and that's the next graph. Meanwhile, favorability of the Affordable Care Act continues to tick up, and at its highest point since July 2010, now 43, looks like, it looks like about 49% actually say favorable, which is pretty good. Interesting here, most say that federal Medicaid payments to Planned Parenthood should continue, like 3/4 say that. And even a majority of Republican men, 55%, think Medicaid payments to Planned Parenthood should continue.
All right.
Okay?
Sure.
So it's a regular tracking poll, and the data's all there, and you can go look at it if you want to. And that's all cool. Let me give you a couple, though, of different looks at what's happening with the healthcare thing. This one is from Josh Kraushaar, conservative over at National Journal. Makes his columns, you can get past the paywall.
Okay. That's nice.
Paul Ryan's political blind spot. By pushing through an Obamacare replacement that has little support with the public or his caucus, he's risking a major political backlash against the GOP. And that's really the overall story arc. I really want to just keep pushing here because the whole idea is this is a boondoggle of a bill. It's unpopular with everybody. It's unpopular with conservatives in the House. It's unpopular with moderates in the House and the Senate. I don't know that there are any moderates in the House. It's unpopular with the public. And the only person that seems to like it is Steve Bannon because he gets to blame it on Paul Ryan.
Yeah, he seems to be thrilled.
House Speaker Paul Ryan, says Josh, is a brilliant policy wonk. Okay, you got me there. Obviously a comedy piece.
Dang.
Maybe
All
satire. because he's not a brilliant policy wonk. He's actually as dumb as he looks, and people just don't get that. But anyway, Josh is a conservative, so he has to prop him up. House Speaker Paul Ryan is a brilliant policy wonk, but he seems oblivious to the populist political forces that propelled Donald Trump to the presidency.
That's some brilliant politics.
This display of uneven healthcare salesmanship by the White House, it's not clear that Trump appreciates how the Speaker's healthcare legislation threatens to alienate the working class voters who provided his narrow margin of victory in last year's presidential election. The emerging mess overselling Ryan's version of healthcare reform is exposing an unpleasant political reality for the fiscally responsible wing of the Republican Party, and I'm sure that's where Josh would put himself. People like free stuff, and it's awfully difficult to take entitlements away after they're granted.
Yes, that's true, and that was an explicit part of the plan going in.
Yeah, take it away. Ryan's entire career has been based on the sunny belief that well-intentioned reforms have a sizable constituency of voters worried about budget-busting government giveaways, but there's a long trail of evidence that points the other way. In fact, if you ask people, they want Medicare and Medicaid, so I don't know why they keep trying to sell this as if it's something else. Anyway, he goes on to say, not a terrific look. This is from the Washington Post today.
Okay.
It's entitled, "The GOP's Obamacare Replacement is a Disaster for Some of Its Most Loyal Voters," and just goes through the numbers in terms of which counties and the fact that red America is the one that's going to be most hurt. And I think we've internalized all of that, so I'm going to bother you and Armando tremendously by turning to Chris Arnott, and you'll see why.
We can't do it.
Yeah,
okay.
We can. Because, look, his first tweet here is, Trump is losing big on healthcare, including with his Rust Belt base.
I need to reach out.
Somebody on the bus or pivot hard or distract hard. That's his prediction. And again, the reason to look at Arnott is because he's actually out there talking to the very Rust Belt voters, Trump voters, that I, even if not you and Armando, are most interested in terms of how this is playing. How do we know that it has some sort of effect? Well, just look at the Gallup polling, if you will. Remember, we checked Gallup Trump numbers. And it turns out Gallup is right in the middle of the pack if you try to analyze, are they leaning left or leaning right in terms of Trump approval. You can look at some of the sites that collect all of this. You can look at Huffington Post, you can look at 538 or Real Clear Politics and get an aggregate if you want to. But the fact is that the Trump Daily from Gallup has been right in the middle of the pack, and it's interesting because I'm going to send you the link here, and it's a rather dramatic fall-off that he's had since healthcare started to be the discussion. All right, so basically, if you look at March 11th, it was 45% approve and 49% disapprove.
Okay.
2 days later, it's 39% approval and 55% disapproval.
So it is. Yes.
Right? So it bounced pretty big, and we'll have to see what it is today. But Arnott is right. It's not playing well with that particular group of voters. And he goes on to predict that, Trump will do the Trump thing and just blame it on somebody else.
Yeah.
But his second tweet storm
no.
is he starts out with, the reason healthcare rollback is so damaging to Trump is because healthcare is especially visceral with his base, and it's his base that he's out talking to again, which is why I'm paying attention to this. The Rust Belt counties that swung biggest to him, he says, one filled with white working-class backroad types, are also defined by ill health.
Yes.
Chris Arnott, has written about the connection between Trump voting and heroin epidemic because he started writing about drugs, and that's how he got into Trump voters in the first place.
Oh, well, that's a funny backdoor.
Right? If it's a country, state, county, or community, and it's filling with drugs, it's a sign things are very wrong, and that's how he started writing about why these people might go for Trump, because they're just so upset they just want to do anything, try to get out of that cycle. It goes beyond that, though. He says one of the biggest differences between the front row types and the back row types is overall health and diet. There's a lot of physical injury, often debilitating, from physical and manual labor. Just think of the miners, for example, and the West Virginia people we were talking about the other day, the guy that walks with a cane and so on and so forth. And there's also a lot of a difference in the culture, he says, and time for healthy living. Or put simply, any lessening in healthcare is a hard, nasty punch to stomach of working class voters, all of them, many who voted for Trump. So it's a stunningly stupid politics in places that swung elections to Trump, like Calhoun County in Michigan or Lake Shota County in Ohio, where he's writing from. If the Trump administration doesn't address the drug epidemic in a compassionate way, he is toast in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. And just the other day, I think it was Pew, if I'm not mistaken, I have to go back and look, but there was a group that actually were publishing the percentage of addiction services, for example, that come from Medicaid in Ohio, West Virginia, places like that. And 40 to 50% of those services are paid for by Medicaid. So when you cut that back, the way the Trump Affordable Care, ACHA, Affordable Healthcare, HCA, Affordable Healthcare Act, is Trump Care is opposing to do, Ryan Care is opposing to do, then you're going to wind up cutting back on addiction services significantly. It's your base that you are hurting. And Ornata simply pointing out that out there talking to people, they're seeing this. They're noticing this.
Okay.
That may well be why the Gallup stuff is dropping.
All right.
Right? Those
Yes.
observations alone make it worthwhile following or not. I want to find out not
Yes.
why they voted for Trump. I don't care about that. They already did it. It's done.
Definitely.
I want to find out what they think now as he starts to go through stuff that's going to hurt them.
I think he should just start now. My prediction is that Armando is okay with today's Chris Arnaud coverage, because I think what was annoying about it was mostly that it was, it was what it was, but it ended up being coverage that was irritating, because it was people saying, well, I think we should X, Y, Z, and Trump is going to do that, and he's absolutely not going to do that. And we were tired of watching them rationalize the fact that this was, that they still supported Trump despite the fact that everybody knew he wasn't going to do it. Now he's not doing it. If the coverage was similar, if the coverage was still, well, he's going to take away my health care and I'm going to die on opioids, but it's great because he's totally going to do something, and give me cash and save my life. And he's not. The fact that they're realizing the reality is setting in, and
some of them. I mean, some,
again,
we went back to
they're certainly idiots.
The West Virginia stuff.
Yeah. Right.
Where they were talking about people in the clinic. There'll be some people, and also Chris Hayes had a fabulous town hall that took place in West Virginia, too, talking to some of those folks.
Yeah.
And they're not exactly ready to forswear Trump yet, but you could see where those seeds come. You could see where they would if this continues. And obviously that's what we're going to still track. As you pointed out, we're like 50 days into this.
Yeah.
So it's not like everybody's going to reverse their position, but there are some people, not all people, who will, and if you just get them to stay home, let alone vote for you, it's a win.
Well, coverage of heartland conservatives / Trump voters / hard-hit rural poor coming to realize that they're being screwed by the rich jerk who promised to help them is great coverage. Everyone loves that.
Yeah.
So it's hard to argue with that one.
Armando is we'll see what happens. The fact is that the future for the
Democratic
Democratic Party isn't necessarily in the upper Midwest and the Rust Belt. But, hey, listen, if you pick that up too, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, we, when we were told that we had to reach out and understand, when the coverage was something that was totally ununderstandable, that they loved him despite being screwed by him, that was difficult to do. Reaching out and understanding that people are coming to understand that they're being screwed, that's a lot easier.
It is, but either way, it's good to do. Our friend Dana Hull, for example, points out some of the trends that happen in a place like West Virginia. It's not exactly, going to be blue next time round. McDowell County, which is where I think that Chris Hayes had his town hall the other day, for example. The Democratic margin compared to the national margin.
Yes.
Right? McDowell County and West Virginia used to be incredibly solidly blue, not so much. Okay? And so you have this 1988, the McDowell County was like 56 points more Democrat than the national margin. 1992 it was 46. In 96 it was 46. In 2000 it was 34. In 2004 it was 26. In 2008 it was 1. By 2012 minus 34, and in 2016 it was minus 53. So the swing from 88 has been tremendous from Democrat to Republican. That's not going to reverse in a day. I wouldn't mind seeing it 1 again like it was in 2008. I wouldn't mind, even if it was closer to 34 than 53. I wouldn't mind if that trend was just broken and started to reverse, even if we don't get too far in the next election. But, it's a start. You got to start somewhere. And I'm not a big fan of the 49-state strategy. You know what that is, right? Everybody but West Virginia.
Well, is that a strategy? Do people have that?
Well, why are you looking at West Virginia? Well, it's part of the country. Sorry.
No, that's true, but that doesn't mean. All right. Well, there are plenty of other states we could ignore too.
Yeah, that's true. We could, we've done that though.
Yeah.
And we wind up losing when we do that. So the whole 50-state strategy that Howard Dean brought to the Democratic Party, which I think was a good idea, is still a good idea. So, again, I'm interested in looking at all of this. This is not our base. It's never been our base. But I just actually find stuff that we don't normally talk about and don't intuitively understand more interesting for learning than the stuff that we already know. That's just me.
Well, okay. You want to learn new things.
Yeah, I get to be like that sometimes.
All right. Well, I guess we'll allow it.
Anyway, for today, as long as we don't dwell on it. So again, there's that, and I think that there's a lot of interesting stuff about all of that. So we have that going on. We have other things that Obama did that Trump is abandoning besides health care. I think today we're going to have environmental issues. Today's the day that they abandon the car fuel economy standards.
Oh, fun.
There'll be, I think West Virginia is in the process, speaking of West Virginia, of abandoning statewide regulation of mining.
Yeah, that was an interesting bit. That I heard they do some mining down there and that miners care about stuff.
Yeah, well, and it also might be a little dangerous, right? But this is one of those, is it jobs or not jobs? If they claim to me that it's going to bring back jobs to get rid of the regulations, I'll look the other way because I want a job. I'm assuming.
Yes, well, it will bring
we'll see how that
jobs.
goes.
So the people who have them now will die, and then they'll become available.
Well, we as progressives have a different point of view on this. But the bigger overall picture here is the attack on regulation, so that if you're a corporation, basically anything that you do is good because we'll claim that it helps you create jobs, whether it does or it doesn't. In fact, we know it's going to line your own pocket, but whether or not it creates jobs or not remains to be seen. This is a Democratic-Republican argument that's going back to the 1930s. And we thought we had it fairly won with Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and I think some of those roots have been forgotten and the unions have become less strong. And as a result, it's like, oh, yeah, sure, why not? Why not just give all the money to the corporations? They're always doing things in our own best interest, right? Not so much. So, it's again, Trump is on the one hand taking health care away from his very supporters, and at the same time is giving money to the people who fired them and would love to replace them with automated whatever they do.
Sure.
And we'll see over time how that plays and, how much support the Republicans have for this. Because what they're doing is now so naked and exposed, they can't even hide behind some of the stuff that they claim that they're doing.
No. Well,
or they used to, anyway.
It's about time, anyway. I mean, if they didn't notice that the guy wearing the $600 slippers at the non-State of the Union was the owner of the Sago mine who, literally killed his miners and still would like yet more regulations repealed, then I don't know what we can do for him. So hopefully,
right. Our friend Arliss Bunny, by the way, kindly points out the state-by-state breakout came from the Kaiser Family Foundation. Thank you. I didn't have that tweet in front of me. Just remembered seeing it, but it's really good.
All right, head on over. Okay. Well, I'm thinking more about this. Yeah, I set that aside. That's a weird thing to see being considered in the West Virginia state legislature, reducing mining safety or eliminating mining safety regulations. That's the kind of stuff that miners are the very first to say, there ought to be a law that these are the laws that they made when people ran around saying that there ought to be a law about something, and they made it, and now.
Right. I mean, it's like you lived in Michigan and you just saw your legislator get rid of all water standards.
Yes.
Because, why do you need them?
Yeah. What would be the point?
Why don't you just get water from your local river? What's the difference?
Right. It's all the same.
It's all the same water.
Use the old pipes. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not certain why.
Well, gutting the EPA is doing that, except across the country.
Yes. Well, we should all. I think the goal was that we bring Flint's water up to the standards of the rest of the country.
We have.
Another way to do this
is,
of course, for us.
And so, that same bottled water standards all over the country. So that's already accomplished. Mission accomplished. Let's move on.
Oh, Well, yes, that is a mission accomplished. Now if we just heat the water up and get it to dehydrated babies, we got it all.
Right. Here's a piece from Stat News. This is the Boston Globe health vertical that I like to follow. The most influential players in the debate over the Obamacare replacement bill. Because we know the contours of it. We know how the people feel about it. Now it's the politics. How does that go? So they defined a couple of people that they thought were worth watching. Senator Lamar Alexander of Tennessee. Experienced policy wonk, unlike Paul Ryan, who isn't a wonk at all, who chairs the Powerful Health Committee and has been clear-eyed about the challenges of overhauling Obamacare, it says here. Senator Tom Cotton, who got hammered live at a town hall and has been reasonable ever since for whatever reason. So he's an expansion state for Medicaid, and that's important in terms of how they react. Rand Paul, Tom Cotton, and Bob Portman and some of the others have not been real keen on that, so they're especially worth watching. But Cotton's been very vocal about it, and yet he's a big Trump supporter on the one hand, and Lamar Alexander chairs the Health Committee on the other. So those are both guys watching on the Senate side. On the House side, Jim Jordan of Ohio, one of the Freedom Caucus founders. He's been very unhappy with the bill.
He looks unhappy.
He claims to represent about 40 people. Of course, it's hard to tell because I don't think they actually announce who's in it. It's secret, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, the Freedom Caucus?
Yeah, I don't think they've ever announced I'm a Freedom Caucus. Here's my card. Here's my voter ID.
Lots of people identify with it, but there may not be a list. Who knows?
Yeah,
I think that may have come up in the past. But so many of them, it's such a selling point for them at home. They've told the press. But okay.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, so because he represents the conservative side of the bill not conservative enough, he's worth watching. And then maybe the fourth person is the CBO director, Keith Hall, who is picked by the budget director, Mick Mulvaney, and some of the other people who are now saying that the CBO is terrible, except for the numbers in the CBO that we like. And it'll be interesting to follow through as this goes forward, because every change that the Republicans make to the bill, it is in trouble, and they are going to have to make changes if they want it to even pass the House. The CBO score really, really hurt them. So when they make changes, it goes back to CBO and they rescore it, and then following those numbers in terms of what happens will be quite interesting.
Yes. By the way, side note on that from Dave Weigel yesterday, covering Schumer's comments on it. The CBO director is an alumnus of the Mercatus Center, whose influence we've traced in the past on the show, funded by the Kochs, and ongoing think tank place, the place that would regularly have trainings for Capitol Hill chiefs of staff that for a couple of years in a row, Democrats were sending their chiefs of staff to those briefings as well. Anyway, so it comes from out of the Koch brothers conservative apparatus, now, of course, a raging liberal because the score is bad.
Right, something along those lines. So, a lot there. Interesting piece here from Brian Beutler in terms of the future of what may happen. Right. This is from, I have this in the Pundit Roundup, but I'll just send that over to you. And the
roundup I've got.
There we go. There's the New Republic. Republicans should fear what Democrats will do when they return to power. The GOP is tempting fate by replacing Obamacare with Trumpcare. Basically setting it up so that single payer is now going to be looking a whole lot better than otherwise would have looked given what they tried to do. So he writes, it would thus behoove Democrats interested in saving the Affordable Care Act to appeal not just to Republicans, but to the interest groups that joined the Obamacare coalition 8 years ago to both kill the AHCA and demand Republicans administer the ACA in good faith. If doctors, hospitals, pharmaceutical manufacturers, insurers, and others sit on their hands and allow Republicans to repeal or sabotage Obamacare, they'll destroy the value liberals saw in appeasing industry stakeholders back when they had congressional supermajorities.
Oh, that's true.
That would tempt some on the left to hope Republicans succeed anyhow, magnifying contradictions along the way to hasten the creation of a truly universal healthcare system in America.
That's a thought.
So his point is it's a win-win for Democrats because if it doesn't pass, it's better for us in the country. And if it does pass, it's better for Democrats. But he points out that would be a particularly inhumane way to bring about a more progressive health policy which is why I never bought into the Jill Stein line that, oh, it's better, or Susan Sarandon, that it's better for Trump to win because that way we can make a comeback.
Yes, well,
that's horrible.
That is horrible, and that was probably the least attractive position she ever took. I didn't like most of the rest of them, but that's the worst.
Right. There's no reason for millions of people to suffer for 4 years, or more simply, so Republicans can satisfy their lust for revenge. The key to stopping it is to make them realize their triumph would be fleeting, their subsequent defeat would be far more complete than it was when Obama signed the ACA into law. And I would remind everybody in West Virginia who knows somebody who's either got an addiction problem, which is everybody, or who knows somebody who had black lung, which is everybody, that the Democrats really are trying to make your life better. The Republicans are trying to make your life worse. And how long that takes to sink in remains to be seen.
Okay.
So that's my segment for today. Wrapping it up from beginning to end, this is Greg Dworkin speaking with my friend David Waldman Kagro in the morning, who kindly tolerates my story arc rants, but I very much appreciate that. And you know, you got to be nimble on this show. You got to be able to move from one thing to the other very quickly, even if you had a strategy of doing something else, because that's just the way, you know, free association works when you actually talk to a human being, which is what David and I do.
Did I disrupt something?
Yeah.
What else have we got?
That's it.
Okay.
So with that, I'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right. Well, I just made $1 million from disrupting you.
Yay.
So there's
Is
at least
Jill
that.
on the show today? It's Wednesday.
That's what I hope. But I don't make her report to me.
This is true, but there's always healthcare to talk about.
Yeah.
So more on that.
That's true. And yeah, I expect her, and she's very good at that. And no reason, I don't think, she had a snow day. No reason to forget that it's Wednesday, except for us.
Right. And, you know, if he has time, Armando can always come on and tell me why I'm wrong because, you know, I guarantee you he thinks so.
Oh, yes, he does. What I should be doing, it should be connecting. I wonder if I can connect. You know, he's not calling, but he can make three-way calls on this thing, but he should be able to see what he types, although that would be awfully distracting.
I have been seeing what he's typing.
Oh, okay. He's sending you the thing.
It has been awfully distracting. He's not happy with me, but that's okay.
That's
he's
all
a
right.
good guy. He's one of my longtime friends, and I love talking with him. And I love when he's on the show, but he doesn't always have time. So take care, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay. Very good. Thanks, Greg. He says, of course, you're wrong, but have a good day anyway. All right. Well, that is pretty funny. And I don't know if you feel like you have time today, Armando, but let's see. We expect Joan probably, I don't know. We usually see her after the 10 o'clock hour. So certainly if there was something you felt like you had to fit in there. Arnade is nonsense. It all continues. I thought you might like this one a little bit better just because, I don't know, this one seemed a lot more, and I put it on me, right? I don't think he's changed the reporting any, but I'm certainly more comfortable. I'm very, very tired of reading stories about people who continue to be fooled and continue to insist that Trump is on their side, even against all mounting evidence, but that we have to reach out and understand them. It's much easier to reach out and understand somebody who says, wait a minute, I need health care, and this looks worse than the other thing. He might be betraying me. Oh, no. That I don't mind reading about. And maybe it's living in a bubble. Maybe it's epistemic closure, as they say. But to me, it's just I read this couple of stories about it, and it's just baffling and it's upsetting. I'm willing to sit through it 500-600 times, but the 800th article I just can't take, even if you've been writing about it all along and you're just following up. All right, Armando, I know you wanted to talk about everything. But the tax return, certainly.
Everyone knows what I think of Arnade, and
yes.
I think the point Greg is drawing from him is valid. They're not happy with this health care reform. I don't need Arnade to tell me that. I'm very distrustful of the guy, period, but anecdotal evidence in general is useless. Greg has polls.
Yes.
He has polls that he can rely on. He doesn't need Arnade for the point. Trump's health care plan is hurting him with his base because... Yeah. My theory is they said, wait, you weren't supposed to screw me. You were supposed to screw them.
Right. I do hear people theorizing that.
And I accept that that's a problem. I do think the West Virginia thing is ridiculous because we're never going to win West Virginia in our lifetime. And the reason is race, period. End of story. But listen, whoever, Joe Manchin's going to win in West Virginia, maybe. because he caters to the race question. Joe Manchin's not running, or he'll defend the health care bill, but he's not a socialist. He's not demanding Medicare for all. It's all nonsense. But look, Joe Manchin's on his own. Nothing we can do. I love the idea. Oh, we're going to primary Joe Manchin. To what end? Why? I mean, he's on his own to me. But anyway, I actually wanted to talk more about the tax return.
Okay.
Because I thought people don't get it. I mean, our people are like, oh, well, look, he made $150 million. That proves he's rich. Why? What does it prove? We don't know the source of the income, but then there's a New York Times story that I tweeted about this morning.
Okay, that might be what I have in pocket.
Do you have
here.
that one?
We'll find out. What is it?
Okay, it's the one where they say he takes the $100 million write-off.
Yes, I have that. Yeah,
Okay.
I haven't read it yet, so let's talk about it.
Well, let me tell you what matters to me in that story.
All right.
The breakdown of his income. 67 million of it came from real estate licensing.
Licensing already in 2005, huh? Okay.
In 2005, he was making $67 million in real estate licensing. What do we mean by real estate licensing? He would sell his name to people put on the buildings.
Yeah.
Trump pretends that everything that says Trump belongs to him. And what we now know is that is almost certainly
auto-playing video from the New York Times.
Wow. I said, did I do that?
Sort of.
And $67 million. That's half of his income.
Yes, just licensing. Didn't make a damn thing.
He sold his name on those hotels and whatnot. Now, they call that real estate licensing. What about the other licensing? Like, Trump Steaks, I don't know all the particulars of Trump Steaks. To take one example, I assume he sold his name to somebody who sold steak.
Yes, I would think so. Or else took advantage of, very often, a place like, I don't know. I'm just calling it out because they do these sorts of things. Omaha Steaks. You can private label them. You just
just
say,
label them. I mean, something
I'll give
like
you
that.
some money and call them Trump Steaks. They're Omaha Steaks with a big T on them.
And Trump University and all these things. So why did the guy do those things if he's so rich? Look, he made $150 million. Well, he needed to, in my view, because if you look at this, which was probably a good year for him, $67 million in real estate licensing.
Mm-hmm. That's good money.
That's good money. $9 million in interest income.
Yes. I
don't know if that's interest and dividend. Again, I'd have it looked at the 2 pages of the 1040. $42 million, I believe, was the total of what's called business income. But hold that thought. What does he mean by business income? Because his salary, his reported salary compensation, was only $998,000.
A mere $998,000.
Now, listen, it's a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. I'm talking about billionaire dollars.
Right, that's true.
But this is year 2 of The Apprentice. How's he reporting that income? Is that under business income? It must be, right? It's the only place it fits because he was making at least $10 million off that show, either as a producer credit. I don't know if he took his compensation in the form of higher percentage of producer fees. We don't know because we don't have his tax returns.
Right.
I mean, we have 2 pages of one in 2005 and 2 pages of one in 1995, and we know some of the things. But at least the Apprentice years, this is all we've seen. But it only fits in as what he's deeming business income. So if $42 million is business income, let's say $10 million, just for the sake of argument, is apprentice income.
Uh-huh.
He made $30 million. Now, $30 million is a lot of money. I'd love to make $3 million or $1 million. I would be thrilled.
Yes, I would.
But a billionaire who only generates $30 million from his businesses on a yearly basis isn't a billionaire.
Right. I did see somebody do a little bit of math. I think it might have been Kurt Eichenwald doing some math and saying, for somebody who claims the assets that he claims, you would if you were earning something like 2% on an annual return on all of your investments, and he was really a billionaire, he would have had something like 2/3 more income than he reported. There's like no way to get down to $150 million in total income on $1 billion of assets that make any return.
Right, but if he really does make $67 million in licensing, we actually can put a price on the Trump brand. I mean,
yes.
You basically take, it's $67 million. What do? You got to figure out what the net of that is. Let's say after expenses is $50 million, and you net it out, then that's probably makes it worth $250, $300 million in valuation formula. So his brand is probably worth $250, $300 million at that point. What else did he have? I don't know. He generated another, depending on how much of that $42 million is apprentice money and other types of money. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, it's $30 million. If you want to be generous and give him 10 times earnings, that's $300 million plus $250. So he was probably worth a neighborhood of $500 million, depending on his real estate holdings. Now, another report I saw said that he sold 2 buildings, one in New York and one in Hong Kong. I don't know what those buildings were. I'm trying to track that down when I have a chance.
Yeah,
but he did report a capital gain of $33 million. What is the capital gain there? Well, you sell the building, and whatever the price is above what you paid for it, that's capital gain.
Okay.
And you should actually pay a lower rate, though I don't remember what the status was in 2005, but it probably was 20% or whatever after the Bush tax cuts on that capital gain. So he sold buildings. We don't know at what price, but why would you sell those buildings, and why would you sell 2 in that same year? Oh, well, I'm going to make $33 million. Is that really the argument for the billionaire?
That's true.
I'm skeptical. I think he needed cash.
Yeah, well, I guess so. I mean, I guess when a buyer comes along, who knows? I guess if you have an actual stable of buildings, I suppose you part with
he didn't,
2 a
though.
year.
He only had a few buildings.
Okay.
In New York, right now he has 40 Wall and what's left and unsold of Trump Tower, and he has obviously the commercial space for leasing.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't really have that much in the way of real estate holdings. Now, he has a lot of golf courses now, though how much of them he actually owns, I don't know. And how many does he own, and how much is just him licensing the name? I'm not sure. We don't know because he never shows us his actual financials.
That's true. By most reports, he's golf courses are things he actually seems to do pretty well with and enjoys administering. And I think he actually may own the bulk of a dozen of them.
I don't know. I mean, he may or may not. We know that when he says he owns a building, generally speaking, he owns about 25% of the building.
He wants to be buried at one of his golf courses, apparently. I read that over the weekend. I'd like to start now, but we'll have to wait.
All right, so the story of the $150 million, the headline, sounds good, but when you get into the details of it, I think you find that he was already cash strapped in 2005. And when I say cash strapped, I mean billionaire cash strapped, living, the life that he wanted to lead with his plane and everything else. That's what I mean. I mean, he probably, has a lifestyle that costs, $80, $90, $100 million a year. So he needs to generate about that much income without having to deplete his assets. He didn't generate that in 2005 by my reckoning because he needed to sell buildings. And he also had, at that point, little access to outside credit outside of Deutsche Bank. Here's my point. 3 years after this tax return, Deutsche Bank sued him on a personal guarantee of $40 million.
Okay.
And he didn't pay it. He fought it. He went to court.
Yes.
He made up lender liability and who knows what. Lawyers can make up anything to get to the table. And he negotiated whatever he negotiated. Later, he lost whatever interest he had left in Trump Entertainment Resorts, which was the company that had the holdings in the casinos that he still owned at that time, which of course now he lost them completely. He didn't sell them. Don't let anybody fool you. So he didn't get out of Atlantic City. He got outed from Atlantic City because he couldn't pay his debts under Trump Entertainment Resorts, so he lost all the equity that he had. By 2008, he didn't have any money again. Cash, I mean. You know, This is what I'm getting at. So what did he need? Well, in 2008, Donald Trump Jr. said things were going to go good because why?
Russia.
A lot of Russian money coming in.
That's true. That was. I mean, everyone is constantly pointing back to that one. His admission that an overwhelming percentage of their cash flow was from doing business with Russians. Which and of course Trump continues to say, I have no deals in Russia. It wasn't so much that he had deals in Russia. It was that Russians were rushing over here to dump their dirty money here because our laws make it particularly easy to launder funds this way. And it happens to be in the business that he's still operating in. Two businesses. One that he was still operating in, which was trying to sell off bits and pieces of the buildings that he still owned. And the other big business that really started booming for him afterwards was the licensing. Although here it's clearly already booming, but this is only 2 years before the Trump Soho opens, which I think it still seems like the watershed moment for his.
Here's the thing you have to remember:
Russia boom.
Licensing creates nice stream of income, and if he signs it over, he could probably borrow against it. Sure. But how much can you borrow against it? Can you borrow enough to build a $1 billion building? Well, the answer is no. You need better sources of credit. That means banks.
Yeah.
And he couldn't borrow from banks.
Yeah, I guess not. Also, I was just thinking about the sale of these two buildings. It's pretty likely that those are deals that were underway for some time. It would be really interesting to see the 2003, 2004 tax returns, the cash situation that created the need to sell these buildings, the sales of which were finalized at last in 2005. That would be real interesting. It's interesting that bits and pieces of these things are coming out. It's interesting also, as many people pointed out, that I guess in part of the pushback, the White House verified the summary pages of the 2005 thing, and then I guess released them themselves, which I guess means the audit is over. But I don't know. Someone else says no.
Well, it's funny if you look back at the letter that his people said about the tax return thing. They actually didn't claim audit for pre-2009 tax returns.
Okay. Well, so there you go. Easy. So he could have released those all along. He just wasn't. Of course. Doing it. Unless he was mailing them to David K. Johnston.
He's been lying all along. I mean, about that.
Yes.
And I think we know that because he had no qualms. Well, it's funny because he basically confirms that, in fact, these were authentically the first 2 pages of his 1040. Now, the 1040 has the cumulatives. It doesn't give us the breakdown. For all we know, part of the income he got was from Russians in 2005. I don't know because he hasn't released the rest of the tax return.
Yeah. And on its face, the tax returns might not even tell us anything because the income will be from 123 Property LLC. So,
yeah, well, he'd have to give us.
We'd all trace that.
We'd have to see what 123.
Right.
He'd have to give us those tax returns too, and generally that's what you'd have to do. But of course, we've normalized not having a president disclose these things, so I guess he doesn't have to anymore. But just the story of the 2005 tax returns, it just seemed to me. I got a little angry with Twitter last night because I don't think people actually understood what they were talking about. What do you think this means, this $150 million? Well, let's see. He said he earned $150. Then he said he also lost $100 million.
Yes,
so
that too.
For tax purposes, he did. He had an adjusted gross income of $53 million, which, by the way, that included the $67 million for licensing. To wit, if he didn't have licensing deals, he'd have a loss. If he didn't have The Apprentice, he had even more of a loss. If he didn't have Trump University or Trump Steaks or Trump whatever he was selling at the time.
Vodka, water.
This is what I'm getting at. I mean, we don't know what his cash flow was from this, but we do know that he took a $103 million loss, according to this 1040, and had a $51 million, I believe was the number, of adjusted gross income. He then took $17 million in deductions that we don't know what they are because we just saw the line item for the total. We don't know what they were itemized because we didn't get the schedule. So he had a taxable income of somewhere in the neighborhood of $36 million, and he paid what? He would have paid $3 or $4 million of income tax. Of course, he got hit by the alternative minimum tax, which upped that number from 4.5 to 36, I believe it was the total he ended up paying, 36.3.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And what does that mean? There's a couple of things it could mean. It means he's not as smart as he says he is in managing his taxes to get such a big alternative minimum tax hit.
That's true. Remember that when he was accused of not paying anything, that meant he was smart.
So does this make him dumb?
Yes. Well, this might not be it, but some things make him dumb.
Well, I'm just saying, if the reverse is true, why isn't he dumb now?
Because there's no such thing as logic.
Oh, okay.
And, he's smart when he doesn't pay taxes, and when he does pay taxes, he's also smart, so that just proves it.
He's smart when he pays, and he's smart when he doesn't pay. He's just smart.
He's
whatever he does
got a big
smart.
brain and stuff.
Okay, so he was smart when he lost all his money in Atlantic City because he was smart.
Right. It's more than you lost, and I'm still here. So, I don't know.
Whatever. I guess my point was I thought that the way people looked at this tax return release was wrong. I think the progressive side of it was, appallingly bad. I think they don't understand the issue, to be honest with you. They just said, "Oh, he made $150 million." Well, that settles it. No, it doesn't settle it. It doesn't settle it at all.
My impression of what was disturbing progressive Twitter last night was I don't even know how we got to it. It wasn't even about that. It was mostly insisting that somehow everyone else had misinterpreted everything and that this was a distraction in some way. And I'm not even sure how that. But I think that's a fight we have on just about everything. At this point, the running joke on Twitter is you get on and say, just type, "This is a distraction," and just go. If you're looking for a conversation and you can't start one, just say something is a distraction and people will fight with you about it. I don't know I guess the idea was focus on, it was funny too, because one set of people was saying, "This is a distraction, focus on Russia," and the other was, "This is a distraction, focus on emoluments," and "This is a distraction, focus on," I don't know what else.
This relates to all of it, though.
Yes, I think it all has to.
What's the connection to Russia? Well, all the people that were around him, I get that, but there's also the fact that his business was floated by the Russians for the last 7 or 8 years.
Sure, I don't see them as distinct. I didn't understand the whole distraction thing either. Although I guess the early spin was, there's certain evidence, including the fact that these things are stamped client copy, that Trump planted these things or wanted them out, and even that I didn't really. By the end of the night, I didn't even understand that. I guess he thought that maybe showing if this was really what he did, and he may be stupid enough to do this. He wanted to show, well, look, that's $150 million. That's more than most of you make in a lifetime. Plus, I paid taxes. So all these people who say I didn't pay any taxes are wrong. But I assume somewhere he's got a better year than that. I don't know. So I'm not even convinced that he planted the thing.
I'm convinced he didn't.
Oh,
personally,
okay.
I don't see what's good for him now because I want to see the schedules to this 1040.
Yes. Well,
isn't that the
would
next
love that, but
obvious question?
Yes, and
I mean, it's not like we were all talking about tax returns yesterday before this happened, were we?
Not yet. Well, I mean,
and it's not like it's the only thing we're talking about today. I don't get it.
It must be a distraction.
I don't even understand the theory.
I don't understand any of it.
You remember yesterday I told you, what if Trump didn't have Twitter? Wouldn't he have be in a better place in terms of his public image since becoming president?
Yes, if he had turned it off then, yes. I think so.
This isn't a guy who's thinking these things through. You know what I mean? And how does he do it? He pulls out he says, hey, go pull out the first 2 pages and mail it to David K. Johnston, a former guest of Kagro in the Morning.
We're going to do that, and then in the morning, just to throw them off the scent, I'm going to tweet about Snoop Dogg.
Yeah,
it's a huge plan. Maybe it's being brilliantly executed. This is exactly what they want me to. They want me to think that he didn't do it, so they'll change his mind in the morning and he'll be distracted by something else. That's that. I missed the opportunity. I should have tweeted to him about Snoop Dogg this morning. I should have said, what are you looking at Snoop Dogg for? This is a distraction. My God, focus on Russia. That would have worked for him. Oh, right, Russia. I do need to focus on that, actually.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I'm getting. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. These theories and these I mean, I'm embarrassed for people who keep saying that. At this point, crediting Trump with some Machiavellian intelligence is embarrassing. You're embarrassing yourself when you act as if he's that smart. He's not. He's proven he's not. My God, he accused Obama of wiretapping him.
Yes.
How did that help him?
I don't know. It was huge, though.
It was huge and terrible for him.
Yes. I don't know. I think I don't know if there's anybody who believes that he has a grand theory of everything and a huge plan. I mean, there are people who believe that Bannon still does, and I'm not. I don't think that's any better. But yeah, I don't know. I think we're all over the idea that Trump
Apparently
has
not.
an overarching
Apparently, everyone
strategy.
thinks he was the leaker and he was brilliant.
I thought that they thought that Bannon convinced him to do it. I don't know. Who knows?
Oh, well, Bannon is the genius now? Did Bannon convince him to do the wiretapping tweet on Obama,
Yes.
or did that one just slip through the cracks?
It's all part of a grand strategy by President Bannon. I don't know. It depends who you talk to. Somebody's going to tell you it's him. Somebody's going to tell you it's Bannon. So I suppose there's probably a fan club out there for Miller as well. Maybe, I don't know if anybody thinks Prince Priebus is coming up with it, but
it's crazy.
It's Katrina
This
Pearson.
is as crazy as, in some ways, it's as crazy as Trump's crazy wiretapping theory.
Yes. Well, it's all pretty crazy out there these days. You can't go too far wrong if you just want to float a balloon on somebody having a brilliant strategy somewhere. You'll get debate on it, but it's as valid as anything else.
I guess. But look, tomorrow there's still going to be a health care bill that needs debating, and the day after, and either Trump will release more tax information or he won't. The answer is almost certainly not. So where does this story go with this tax return? I think, if anything, there's more interest in finding out what's behind that. So in that sense, I think it's not positive for him. I'll put it to you this way. If I was advising Trump and he asked me, should I leak these 2 pages, I would have told him no.
Okay.
And maybe that makes me stupid because
That's
I didn't see the distraction potential here.
Yeah.
But let's be clear. Who's making it a distraction? It's progressives. I don't get it. Anyway, let me clear the field. I know that
oh yes,
John's around the corner, so let me clear the decks. I want to find out what happened yesterday. That was the Ides of March. Was it the debt ceiling or something else?
I'll have to clear that thing up when we hear from her. But you don't have to run away. But it's always good.
My things aren't her things. Her things matter. Mine are just like, I'm the guy who, what grinds my gears segment of your show, which is basically useless and pointless. But it might be slightly entertaining to hear me get upset about things that are stupid and pointless.
Andy Rooney had a huge run.
Exactly. I'm the cranky old man of Kagro in the Morning.
All right. Well, we'll take it. It gets us through the day.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I'll be listening to hear about what happened yesterday that was averted or not averted.
Okay. Very good. We'll see if we can figure that out. I hope she remembers. Didn't just slip her mind the way it slipped mine.
She was distracted.
Yes, that's right. Snoop Dogg got mentioned, and then, oh man, the BBC dad, and now I can't think.
Right. I did see one story I'm sure she'll talk about today, that the $3 million in Social Security savings in the health plan that the CBO calculated.
Three what?
$1 billion.
Billion. Okay. All right.
In savings on social. Did I say million? I meant
yes.
billion.
I thought, well, that's
million here, $1 billion there.
Pretty soon.
It all adds up.
Right. Okay.
But anyway,
I'll ask.
It is pretty shocking that savings comes from people dying.
It probably does, doesn't it? Is that real?
It does. No,
I imagine
literally,
it must
that's
be.
what it does. They looked up the footnote. Joan wrote about it.
Huh.
And she can tell you like that's the calculation of that. And she just tweeted that it was about the debt ceiling.
Yeah, okay. I forgot about she said I forgot. The whole world forgot about the debt ceiling because Snoop Dogg and BBC Dad, really, it's his fault. We'll have to catch up on that. And now, so $3 billion extra in Social Security savings because
people will die sooner.
Yeah, what was Alan? I've already lost. This slipped in my mind. His name, the congressman from Florida, ex-congressman from Florida.
Alan Grayson.
Yeah,
it's right in his line now. By the way,
God,
Bernie used that modified line too.
Oh yeah.
So apparently, it's getting mainstreamed. Yeah,
remember it was a huge outrage. He was definitely persona non grata for a long time. And then for another
there are a lot of
reason
things I didn't like
but
about Grayson, but that line didn't bother me.
That was the one. He got it right.
Yeah, I never had a problem with that one. There are other things
he didn't score the
said
savings though. That's the part that.
Yeah, there are other things he said and did that I found a little problematic, but that particular line I thought made sense. Anyway, it looks like Joan's ready.
Yes.
Why don't I clear the deck so she can come in
All right.
and bring you some actual real news as opposed to the man yelling
if there's
at
any such
cloud
thing.
Yes.
I am. Okay, well, thanks very much, Armando.
Okay.
This keeps the day easy. I appreciate it, and we can talk. It also helps disguise the noise in the background. So that's good. All right. Well, we're ready for you, Joan, whenever you're ready. And it turns out, like Armando mentioned, she just tweeted, yeah, I forgot all about the debt ceiling thing. So what do we do? I assume that Stephen Mnuchin found something in the couch to tide us over, but you would think that would have made the news at some point. Maybe you're probably looking that up right now, trying to figure out what we did. Or wouldn't that be something if, like, the debt ceiling came and went and nobody did anything? This is possible in the Trump administration, that nobody did anything, and we were all just like, whatever. I've lost track of this, and I have no idea where it's coming from. So, or no idea how we survived the debt. Oh, look at this. Here's the that fun GIF of BBC Dad's kids is making the rounds again, and this time from who? From somebody with a blue check mark that means they're verified, asking who made this. And I'm pretty sure that when I tweeted it around this morning, there was a credit along with it. So now I want to go and solve this mystery. But first, we'll welcome Joan McCarter back to the show. Good morning, Joan.
Good morning. I'm just here Googling debt ceiling.
Yeah, what happened, please? Because I was going to just do that. I'm glad you're working on it too. I've got too many things happening at once. That was right? You said the Ides of March, and that's what kept it in mind for me. And yesterday, Armando and I were like, "What?" I remember that she said when, but what was it again? Oh,
yeah.
Nothing. Just the debt ceiling, $1 trillion coin.
Maybe he did find that money in the couch cushions.
He may have.
It came and went yesterday, and we didn't hear about it, did we? Well, actually, today is the Ides, but
okay. But still, usually they say,
it
tomorrow
may have been the 17th. Let's see, McConnell. We will raise the debt ceiling, but timing is unclear. We found out yesterday.
Okay, so maybe March 15th. This sounds like it could be that March 15th was an estimate for about when it would happen, and maybe it won't happen until the 20th, and so on the 19th they'll fix it.
And we still have the continuing resolution expiring in a month.
Okay.
The end of April, I believe. The end of April, I think.
Yeah, it'd be too obvious to do it on tax day.
Hard time remembering all of this.
Yay! Okay, well, so the world hasn't collapsed. The international economic order, as far as we know, still stable.
McConnell and Munchkin are apparently discussing
Munchkin. Okay, they're
we
talking
just don't
it over.
Exactly when.
All right. Well, normally there's a whole battery of deputy secretaries who will take care of stuff like this, but we don't have any. So Stephen Mnuchin and I assume one or both of Goldman and Sachs are going to be putting their heads together on this and finding some dollars and fixing it. But we just don't know when yet. Usually by now they should have pinpointed something. Usually by this point they say it runs out at 2 p.m. on. Oh,
well,
find something?
yeah. As a matter of fact, tomorrow.
Oh well, geez. Okay, well
they start extraordinary measures tomorrow.
Well, good. I love extraordinary things.
Actually, we start the extraordinary measures today.
Hell, why not yesterday?
Lynch told congressional leaders last week that he will begin Wednesday to suspend the sale of state and local government bonds, which count against the national debt.
Okay. Where are you reading this?
I have a USA Today story.
USA Today, all right.
I will send it to you.
Sure. We can share it with
he
readers
thinks
later.
that his extraordinary measures can last until fall.
Those are some extraordinary measures.
Yes.
Well, yeah, that's maybe we can float on the payroll we're not giving to deputy secretaries.
There you go.
Add that all up, and we could be in much better shape. All right.
Or ambassadors, or
right.
There's
we don't have any of them.
A lot of empty seats there, so.
Yeah. Okay. Several hundred.
So, yeah, that we don't have to panic over.
Okay, well, that's good. I don't know. It always panicked this last time, but I guess it really only, now that I think about it, the old stories about the true panic really was when we were nearing the end of the extraordinary measures tricks.
Yeah.
If I recall correctly. So, okay, so this
time... and, there was always the House maniacs that weren't going to allow it to happen. Right. And
that was
Mitch McConnell, who sees it as the perfect hostage. To keep President Obama from doing things or to try to force him to do other things.
Yeah. Well, not so much anymore, I guess, and we won't have it
hard to say.
Fall.
Yeah. By the time we get there, they may be having to take hostages against Trump, too.
Could be. It's a good 25th Amendment hostage.
Yes.
He won't care. But anyway, so, well, okay, we made it this far. And tomorrow begins the extraordinary measures, and that'll take us through till fall. And if the old pattern holds, and the old pattern is a pretty good one. You don't do anything until you absolutely, positively have to, or everybody's going to drop dead tomorrow. That's when they usually get around to these things in Congress, in particular. Because they want it to be a hostage
they really
situation.
need to put this off as long as possible because Trump care is going to take who knows how long. Ryan still wants to mash it through as soon as possible next week.
Yes.
But it keeps getting complicated. His latest plan, you know how yesterday everybody from the administration was coming out and saying the CBO messed up because they didn't consider all three prongs of this?
Okay. Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah.
I knew that they were mad, but okay, what the three prongs? You mean the next
three
stages?
Prongs. The three prongs was actually just something that Trump came up with a week ago.
There's 16 prongs, as a matter of fact, and you should be considering all of them.
And of course, there wasn't any second prong written for the CBO to consider. So, of course, they didn't score it. Only in Paul Ryan's world can the CBO score pixie dust.
Okay. I'm taking the video from the debates of Trump and dubbing in him leaning into the microphone and saying, prong.
Prong.
You forgot and the reason you don't have the number of this right is because prong.
Prong.
So second and third prongs, if they exist in somebody's head, haven't been written down. That's why the CBO can't score them, and that would ordinarily pass muster always. That's real. They only score things that are written and that you show to them, by the way. That's another thing. You can't hide it in the basement and hope that they'll score it. So,
well, Paul Ryan's taking it out of the basement, apparently, and writing it. And
all right.
It's not going to make any difference to the CBO, probably. Because you just wait till you hear what's in the second package that he now wants to pass along with the first passage in order to sweeten the deal to get more Republicans on board.
So prong 1 and 2 together now? Yeah. Possibly? Okay, what's in it?
Selling insurance across state lines, tort reform.
What year is this?
I know.
Wow. All right. So this is the same. This is now going on nearly 25 years. They've been flogging this.
Tort
reform.
Tort reform.
Generally
limiting
or
malpractice awards.
Okay, sure. I mean, nothing has marked the passage of the last 25 years as clearly as all of the doctors turning in the stethoscopes and scalpels for spatulas, flipping burgers because it's too expensive to have insurance. Everybody continues to be doctors.
And, okay, so it will reduce the cost of doctors' malpractice insurance? It's not going to do a whole heck of a lot to reduce premiums for everybody else.
That's good. Well, there are insurance savings after all. That's good news.
And selling insurance across state lines, there's nothing saying insurance companies can't do it now, except their bottom lines. It's too complicated and it's too expensive to try to figure out how to sell your insurance in varied markets. They can do it now. They don't want to.
Yeah, that is unusual. I did see in a few minutes of John Oliver's show pointing out, there are a number of states that do that. There's a number of states that have actually worked out mechanisms for it, and there are no takers.
Yeah,
because it doesn't make any sense. And what's funny is that they've glossed over such a giant point in all of this, which is that, of course, I'm thinking of all the things that they always want to leave up to the states. The insurance administration is one of those things, and it's not that you can't take your insurance and sell it somewhere else. It's that you have to deal with the insurance commissioner in that state, and and it's not even an unfamiliar problem. And they do deal with it with guns and gun permits all the time. They're constantly crying about how each state has different regulations, and so they've spent an awful lot of time trying to harmonize those, but no time trying to harmonize insurance regulations across state lines because the people who sell insurance don't want it or care.
Right.
Huh. Well,
and, there is one way they can do it. Yeah. They can just lower everybody's regulations, use the lowest common denominator for state regulations.
They could.
Kind of like how all of the credit card companies are in Delaware.
Yes. All
right. Have all of the insurance companies go to, say, Texas, because it has the least regulatory system for health insurance. But that doesn't really help somebody in Washington State or in New York.
Not an insurer.
No.
And I guess wouldn't really help anybody either. I mean, nobody would be particularly happy about buying something that... I guess if you tell people, what we're going to do is we're going to administer your health care the way we administer your credit card... And everyone will say,
that'll go over well.
Terrific. I can't wait till they have such a responsive mechanism.
People will be even more thrilled about their insurance companies.
Right. And you'll face that nice menu when you dial in, for diverticulitis, press one. There's going to be so many. Press 197 star. For diabetes, 198 star. Please listen to the whole menu where there have been changes. Wow.
The other thing, so maybe it makes some Republicans feel better about voting for the really bad part that's going to take insurance away from 24 million people and save Social Security $3 billion because people die.
Yeah, right. We were just, Rhonda was anticipating that. Yeah, so that's real. That's actually in there. I mean, I guess in fancier words.
According to the CBO, they had it in a footnote.
What? Okay.
It will reduce Social Security outlays over the next decade by $3 billion.
Wow. How many dead people?
And,
is
you
that?
know, CBO doesn't say because people will die, but
Yeah, how do they say it? Do you know? Do you have it? The footnote?
it will reduce outlays by $3 billion for
That's
Social
all.
Security Administration in the next 10 years.
Okay. No because at all. It doesn't say. Okay.
There's one thing that reduces Social Security's outlays.
Absent slashing benefits.
Because it doesn't do anything about Social Security disability. The law doesn't affect that at all.
Okay.
They won't have to pay benefits for that many more people because they won't be around.
Well, as we said, that's big points for Grayson.
But that's another story. Back to Paul Ryan's second prong.
Yeah.
It can't pass through budget reconciliation.
His thing.
So
Yes.
this second prong has to get 60 votes in the Senate. If it's attached to repeal, it's not going to get 60 votes in the Senate. It's not going to get 8 Democrats. So.
Yeah, so, okay, and that's it. That's the prong.
And meanwhile, making it even worse, we've got Trump apparently working with Ted Cruz and Ted Cruz's Tortilla Flats buddies. Tortilla Coast? Tortilla Flats? Whatever.
Coast, I believe, yes.
With his maniac friends in the House to do a manager's amendment to go with what I guess we now call prong 1. That would cut Medicaid faster. Freeze the Medicaid expansion at the end of this year. Yeah.
So
and put in the various restrictions sooner.
And Ted Cruz working on that, huh?
With Trump.
Because I think the problem with the people who think that, well, the missing votes who are holding out because it's not conservative enough and doesn't cut enough are in the House.
Yes.
Not the Senate.
Well, there's a couple of them, too.
I guess there's a few.
Yeah.
Ted Cruz, apparently.
Ted Cruz. Mike Lee goes back
Lee.
and forth and complains. Who knows what Mike Lee's going to do? Rand Paul is grandstanding a great deal about it. So they're sort of the repeal-only crowd in the Senate.
All right.
But if they get that,
yes,
then you have a larger problem with all of the Medicaid expansion state senators.
Right.
And that's a growing list. It's up to 8, 10 who were really uncomfortable with this.
And so they'll make it, the manager's amendment will make it worse. So I can't imagine that passing.
Can Ryan sweeten the pot enough with tort reform to make up for killing Medicaid?
I guess that's attractive to him, but I don't see, I mean, it doesn't make any fiscal sense really, but it might just be enough to convince some people that conservative enough things are happening. But okay, so I'm trying to think about the procedural mechanism is, I guess they just schedule that next. That's the whole trick.
I guess so. Procedurally, I don't know that he's worked it all out. I don't know if Ryan's on board with this idea of the manager's amendment. But the White House is moving forward with it.
Okay.
Apparently he had another pizza and bowling night last night, or it was on the schedule. I don't know if the weather allowed it.
Well, they didn't get much snow, as it turns out, in
but,
DC.
Flights, everybody getting back into town was the problem.
Okay.
But Trump has been wooing the crazies, the maniacs, with pizza and beer.
Good. That's a good way to do it. That's very blue collar. We like
and
that.
Bowling.
Also good.
Yeah.
Well, it's good he's making use of the recreational facilities there at the White House. We're paying enough for him. I'm tired of him going to the golf courses. So that's good.
There's another, and I'm not sure how this fits in. Yesterday, the Trump administration sent out a letter to states saying that if they want to impose work requirements on Medicaid or emergency room co-payments, then they can.
Work requirements.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that doesn't really seem to fit in with the Medicaid part of things very well, does it? I mean, most of the people are either elderly or
disabled,
and
or
ill.
children.
That's why they're on.
Or in Medicaid expansion, already the working poor.
Yes. So what kind? Yeah. All right. Well, they can. Fine.
And this is one of the things that the Republican Study Committee, isn't that what they're called? Republican Study Group?
Yes, I believe so.
The group that's
group,
not
yes.
the Freedom Caucus, but is almost as crazy.
Right.
They've been pushing for work requirements in Medicaid. So maybe this is the administration not trying to get it into the legislation, but doing it administratively to get those guys on board.
All right.
I don't know.
It's a matter of, all right, so they're trying to come up with a package of concessions that some of which can be attached to the legislation, some of which can just be passed in association, or offered for passage anyway, in association with, and then some administrative action, some executive action on these things. All right, well, it's a plan. They've discovered where the levers of government are. Whether that makes the legislative branch work or not, that's always a crapshoot. But okay, points for figuring out that there are procedures available to them, even if the proposals are horrible.
The proposals are horrible. It's really hard to overstate how much this whole push is a tax cut for the rich.
Yes.
On the backs of the working poor.
Yeah. Greg tells us that they're beginning to get the sense of it in Trump country, or at least getting the sense of this will make my coverage worse. I don't know how much of the tax issue has sunk in, but oops, hang on a second. It's I'm giving a few directions here. There you go, back at home. All right, you got it? Okay, pardon me. A little bit of a distraction here, but it looks like the loose tooth issue
I'm
resolving
envisioning
itself.
a little kid running in, swinging her arms.
Yeah, came in saying, "My tooth is loose." So, okay, we've been anticipating a tooth extraction all morning, and I think it's about to go on here. So, so I came in to ask, "Where's the salt?" He wants to use salt water.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Have you experienced tooth fairy inflation in your house?
Yeah. Oh boy, have we. Although it's getting increasingly difficult to secret the tooth fairy in and out of the room. But yeah, we have, and I think we got hit with it first when we had a couple of extractions at the dentist, which were kind of painful or difficult. That we said, all right, well. We're going to have to boost the take on this one. But, yeah, it's up. We used to get it in coin form back in the day.
Yeah, it was a quarter.
It's paper money now, or we probably could move to gift cards at this point. Oh, and here's the thing. Right? I'm going to give you a $5 gift card, but it's got a $1 activation fee. I can make some of this back.
Here, learn about commerce early, kid. This is how capitalism works.
Whether you get paid for your job this way. So okay, a little bit of inflation on that front, but we should start cutting that and sending the savings to Stephen Mnuchin and other rich friends, just to teach them about taxes as well. Okay, so this is beginning to sink in, and the extent to which, as you're saying here, that this is a huge tax cut, it is a rather large insult.
It's a rather large insult. I mean, they love the idea that they're cutting taxes, and meanwhile, $880 billion over the next 10 years comes out of Medicaid.
Sorry, everybody.
$880 billion.
Yeah. Well, the trick is
which is a boost for Social Security.
That is true. They die as a result. And, well, so much the better. So it's sad news, no doubt, but I don't know. I don't know what else to do except to wait for it to sink in on people, but we're going to have a lot of people to take care of.
And I think it is sinking in on people. It's hard to balance. This is why doing healthcare is so complicated.
Who knew?
Who knew? To lower costs, the government looks at it, lawmakers look at it and say, we've got to make people less costly.
Right. Or make less people.
Or make less people. The people look at it and say, you've got to lower my costs. And it's pretty hard to do both. Unless you just give in and do single payer.
And I do see that increasingly mentioned in unlikely places, or I guess in
like
town halls.
Like a Newsmax op-ed from one of Trump's old friends.
Yeah, what's that about? Who wrote that?
Yeah, I don't know what that's about. I didn't have time to read it. I just saw the précis of it where he's saying, give everybody Medicaid expansion.
Yes. Well, that would have solved a lot of problems earlier, including
yes,
the
it would
election.
have. Thank you, Joe Lieberman.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, why not lay it at his feet? I can't.
It wasn't
Medicaid
Medicaid expansion. It was Medicare expansion.
Okay. Oh, all right. Well, okay.
I will always blame Joe Lieberman for Obamacare being not as good as it could have been.
Yeah, and
because up until the time Democrats said, okay, you're the one vote, you can give us Medicare for people age 55 and older, something you've always supported until that point when they needed him.
Well, he was with us on everything but the war.
Yeah.
So that's good. We're rid of him, although he did show back up in Washington the other day. I assume he never left, but we just don't hear from him all the time.
I can't imagine he left.
But
no.
he showed up to testify for somebody's hearing. I can't remember.
It was Betsy DeVos, wasn't it?
It may have
been.
That
he was shepherding through the Senate?
It may have been. I think that I was checking on a number of hearings looking back, and I was, there he is.
Yeah.
And I know that hers was one of the ones I looked in on.
I think it was hers, which I don't. This having a Senate chaperone.
Yeah,
I've never understood that tradition, but that's what he did for her.
Yeah, I don't know. Usually I could see where it could smooth someone's approval, but one, he won't, and he in particular can't do that, and two, there was no smoothing her. Consideration anyway. Okay.
Bad pick.
All right. Well, what else? I don't know. Let's see. I'm scrolling down your other stories here.
Yeah, I'm pretty much all Trump care all the time. It's been such a moving target. It's very complicated, very chaotic. Ryan is not doing a good job of controlling this, but of course he's not, because look at the house that he inherited.
Oh, yes. He inherited a mess.
Yeah.
Just like Trump. Everybody's getting messes. It's weird. Of course, well, it was his own mess, this one. And,
it was his own mess.
Yeah.
Yes.
John Boehner might agree. I did leave you a mess.
John Boehner's probably having a pretty good week. He's in Tokyo.
Oh.
I believe.
Having, sake.
Probably doing some kind of, making money, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Well, what other reason would there be?
But yeah, he was with Abe yesterday.
Okay. Well, I should hope he's making money if he has to spend time there. Okay. So, but we don't know what is it connected to it wouldn't be connected to the administration. It's just lobbying about something, maybe a trade deal. I don't even know what he's
Probably a trade deal, I would imagine.
We can afford to not pay attention to what he's doing at the moment, I think. Unless, I don't know, maybe it's distraction. I should be keeping my eye. Somebody somewhere is tweeting that I'm being distracted by Trump and I should be watching Boehner.
There are lots of threads to follow with Trump.
Yeah.
The distraction argument I don't get.
No.
But you and Armando already covered that one, so.
Yeah. Well, if you can think of any other distractions that I should avoid, let me know.
I certainly will.
Okay. What now? Do we know where Trump himself is? In the news today, you mentioned that he was working with Cruz on a manager's amendment.
Mm-hmm.
But
he's been kind of back and forth on all of this.
That's it.
Although apparently he's fine with breaking his promise from the campaign that he wouldn't cut Medicaid.
Okay.
He's over that.
He's come to grips with that. Has he said so, or is he just ignoring it?
He's just ignoring it.
All right, then.
Although, while he's signing off on all of this, don't call it Trump care. The White House says.
The one thing he doesn't want to have his name on it.
Paul Ryan saying, don't call it Ryan care.
Neither of them really are great names anyway. I mean, I know you want to attach it to somebody, but there's something, I don't know, the number of syllables maybe, just Obamacare, that worked.
It worked.
And I know it was supposed to be disparaging, but and that worked to some extent. But
it worked to some extent. I
Trump
rather do wish the administration, and I guess it was Obama himself, hadn't embraced it.
Yeah.
Because we did have then the confusion between Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act.
That is true. I still can't believe that, but it really did happen.
It really did happen.
But yeah, I don't know. I imagine that would have happened.
It is hard to believe when you pay as much attention as we pay to things that are so obvious to us, to realize that lots of other people don't have the same luxury of time to pay attention to these kinds of things.
Right.
Or interest, to be honest.
That's true, too. Yeah, they may have plenty of time. They could be paying attention to that and not watching, I don't know, The Bachelor or something.
Yeah.
But that's more interesting somehow. Okay. I really didn't see that one coming so much either. That, well, people will actually think they're two different things.
We saw a glimpse of it a couple of years ago in Kentucky.
Yes, that was true when they renamed it there. But I think that I was pretty amazed when that happened. Certainly at the time, it wouldn't have occurred to me to say, no, Mr. President, don't embrace it, because then people will think it's two different things. Because I imagine they would have pushed back and they would have said, well, even if I don't embrace it, they're out there calling it Obamacare, whereas I'm calling it the Affordable Care Act. They're going to think, if they're going to think it's two different things, they're going to do that whether I embrace it or not. So I can either stand here and get punched in the face with it or try and blunt it.
Right.
And
assume that it's going to give so many people such great stuff that having it called Obamacare in the long run is going to reflect my legacy.
Yeah. No, that may not yet work out, but I'm pretty sure I would have counseled for anything that blunts the attacks at this point. You might as well take, because they're not going to stop calling it Obamacare.
No.
So, all right. Well, in hindsight, it's a good observation, I guess, to make that it might have helped with the confusion, but it was a lousy choice as between just getting beaten over the head with this disparaging term and maybe people will become confused, because people will become confused anyway.
Yes, they will. And what's kind of fun about this with the people, it's got the same problems. Trump Care's got the same problems as Obamacare. Well, actually, it's less popular than Obamacare. Okay. But one thing in particular is the surcharge. So it replaces the mandate in Obamacare, which is that says everybody has to have insurance.
Yes.
With, if you let your insurance lapse, you have to pay a 30% surcharge for a year for your premiums. Mm-hmm. That gets 18% support in that morning consult poll that Greg was talking about this morning.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be unpopular.
Which is about as popular as the mandate was.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, so people at least are not terribly confused about what it is, and that they're going to end up having to pay it. Do you know, is that Is that supposed to? How do they express it? Is that a 30% cap on the premium, or do they just right out of the box say,
here's your premium, we're going to tack on an additional 30%.
So
and it's going to the
up?
insurance company,
Right?
not to the government, which,
Yes.
back to last week's discussion, is a problem potentially for the Senate parliamentarian in pushing this through in budget reconciliation. We'll
Yes.
see.
That won't help the bottom line in any way. The money doesn't go to the federal government.
And it's hard to imagine people are any happier about that going to their insurance company than they were the federal government.
So I was wondering, I guess I'll have to take a look, I guess, at the language itself. I mean, it may be that it's not, if it's not a cap, then I guess that means 30% is our starting point. I suppose there will be some insurers who may think that they can get away with more. There will be, I guess, put them at a competitive disadvantage if others stay at 30, but I guess there's no limit to it unless that's written in there.
Can federal law say, insurance company, this is how much you have to charge?
I don't know. That's a
Can
weird
they say
thing.
no less than 30% and get away with it? I mean, how does
I don't know. And actually,
a federal law tell a private company how much to charge for something?
It's socialism, I tell you. Centralized economic planning. I'm not even sure what. It could pose all sorts of problems, but just, in terms of, I don't know why I'm holding Republicans to their standards about free enterprise, because they'll just waive all of those things when they need to. But thinking about it, like, okay, if it's a cap, I understand that as governmental language. Okay, well, you can charge a premium, but no more than 30%. But if it's not that, and you can charge more, that's one problem. And if it's not that, can insurance companies say, we only charge 15, come over to us? Or must they do 30% or more?
My understanding is they must do 30%.
That sounds extraordinary. There's a number of issues, I guess, that would bring up, including, so you can't waive it. So that's not.
It has to be in the law.
You would think.
They think to replace the mandate. You have to have something to try to force people to keep insurance, to keep the insurance companies happy. Mm-hmm. Which they're not, by the way, with this law.
I can imagine.
With this bill.
Why? That doesn't offer them very much in the way of flexibility. They can't change the number. They might not be able to go higher. They might not be able to go lower.
Right. Because the mandate is not them.
Right.
And it gives them a captive audience. And, bottom line, it's going to be primarily younger, healthier people that sign up.
Yeah.
The surge charge does the opposite. It's complete disincentive for somebody to sign up for healthcare unless they're sick.
Right. So anybody who's paying it is coming in announcing, I'm going to cost you an arm and a leg.
Yeah.
And I imagine that...
And insurance companies will adjust the premium.
Yeah.
For that.
I guess that's true.
That extra 30%. But it's still going to be an expensive patient for them. Why rationally would anybody who's healthy, who's had a life change that's meant that they haven't had insurance for 62 days, why would they then run to sign up to pay something that expensive for the next year?
You'd wait until it was an emergency, obviously. Yeah. So that doesn't work for policy reasons. And then I'm wondering, what's the tax treatment of this? I can imagine very quickly insurance companies coming back and saying, we don't have any choice about this charge or how much it is or how little it is. It's forced on us by the government. And it's revenue, and that's wonderful and everything, but it's taxable. And since it's government mandated, we think it ought to be taxed at a lower rate. I don't know why I wouldn't lobby for that. I don't want my customers are angry about paying it. It's disincentivizing their joining us as customers. This is a huge liability for me, even though it's income. So I think it should be tax free. This was your idea. If I was charging it, fine. Charge me whatever my tax rate is. But you said I have to do this in order to manage your policy. I think this is dumb. You made me do it. This should be 0%.
I like that idea.
I should be lobbying for them. I mean, it's...
You should be lobbying for them. Go sign up.
Yeah.
Go sign up with AHIP.
Right. Okay. Why not? I could make a lot of money. It saves them on taxes. It's evil. They love that. But it's somehow anti-AHCA. So maybe it's progressive in the end. I don't know. Or it's a trap and a distraction. I'm not sure which. But
everything's a trap and a distraction.
Yeah, they're not going to like having to administer this, obviously, in a 30%. So it's 30% of what, by the way? Of the premiums?
Of the premium cost.
So they're already adjusting
their premiums.
their
So if your
premiums
premium
up.
would be $120 a month, it's going to be...
Why did you pick 120?
160.
Okay, good math. You should have gone with 100. That was what if your premium is $241 a month? You got a calculator handy? So
don't make me do percentages.
They're already bumping the only people who will come onto insurance at that point, as you've pointed out, are people who are going to cost them an arm and a leg. So they're going to bump up. Or
people who can afford it. You know, there will be some people who can afford it and who are responsible and say, I've got to have coverage.
Okay. The lazy rich.
The lazy rich.
Huge percentage. Oh, you know, they're not always the hardest working people in the world. Or ever. But, yeah, okay, so they'll come on. But your premiums will already be too high because you're either... I don't know, you're either lazy or forgetful or whatever, or you absolutely have to have insurance now and have been skipping it for a while because of whatever the life change was that forced you off, and you just don't want to pay the penalty of going back on again until you need to. So when you do, their premiums will be higher, and then it'll be higher again by 30% because law. I mean, I don't understand why the actuarial side of this can't take care of things. From the insurance company perspective, they're going to be protecting themselves.
Right.
The 30% is, I imagine they would just treat that as a windfall. I would, if I were the CEO, I'd certainly instruct them to do it that way, unless they really think they're competing in the marketplace. Well, we have to keep whatever the actuaries would say ordinarily our premium has to be, you can back that up by 30%. And lower the price to lure them in versus our competitors because we're going to get that 30% back anyway by law. And we can point to that and say, it's not even us. We would have lowered your premiums even more if it was up to us. But the government is making us do this to you.
If you know, and that's assuming that there's going to be competition in the marketplace.
I guess that might be a mistake too.
It's hard to say. You don't have the exchanges anymore, as far as I understand. Exchanges are something that will go away. Healthcare.gov will, I don't know, wither and die. I don't know that we're going to still see the apples-to-apples comparison that Healthcare.gov gives people.
That's true, and that's been, I mean, it's the most, you'd think the most obvious part of this, the public-facing part of this that will go away, but I haven't considered it. I haven't used the exchange. I haven't shopped for healthcare that way. So everybody else who has will, you know, some people will say, well, good, the websites didn't work very well anyway, or it was a pain in the neck, and I'm sure for many people it was. But there's literally now, where do I even go? How do you're just back to, I'm going to watch TV and wait for ads for insurance companies to come up and call them?
Yeah. I haven't actually looked at what they do to the exchanges, but I think that they go away.
I imagine they're paid for.
They're not going to be spending any money on
right. So, I don't know. I mean, it takes somebody's work to maintain the things, and somebody's got to be, you know, making sure the data is correct, et cetera. So I guess if they just eliminate all of that, you can, I guess you get up in the morning and type in Aetna.com and see what their calculator says it's going to cost you, and then every other insurance company that you can think of, like shopping for a used car. I imagine perhaps a market will emerge such that there will eventually be an app that will
Insurance
purport
Max?
to tell you. Yeah, exactly. You type in all your diseases and your name and address and social security number, and it's all totally secure. And Russia totally doesn't get any of it, neither does China. And then it'll come back to you with what purports to be 3 good prices on insurance, but is in fact, the quotes from the companies that paid the app maker to include them, and you won't know the difference because once there used to be something online that was run by the government and didn't work that
Made
way.
all of this easy.
Right. But now it'll be, so it'll be easy-ish looking again. It'll just be run by private interests who paid for the privilege of being promoted to you as an insurer. Never mind whether there's really a, whether a mom and pop operation or a corporate operation in your state that actually has better prices. If they didn't pay insurancemax.com, you're not going to get their quote. So it'll be like trying to get plane tickets again.
Here's something else to think about in whether or not they want their prices to be competitive. They still have to keep offering insurance to anybody regardless of whether they have a pre-existing condition. So, if you want to weed out these people, whether or not they're paying a 30% surcharge, that's only for the first year. If you get them and they stay on your insurance, you have to carry them without that 30%.
Okay.
For the whole time after that first year. Are you going to make it attractive to somebody who's sick? You can set the price wherever you want.
Yeah, I guess that they probably
But
not.
you're not going to want to take on somebody with a pre-existing condition.
Yeah.
So they're going to get an awfully expensive price.
But only for the first year. But
No.
then, I mean,
Well,
it'll be 30% less in the second year.
Yeah.
It'll just be artificially high minus
So
the 30%.
this gives the insurance companies all the incentive they need to price sick people out, as they did before. But they can say they're abiding by the no discrimination pre-existing conditions. They can just, there's nothing to stop them from doing it in reality.
Well, that is, on the upside, there's $3 billion in Social Security savings in it. And that's how. And maybe that'll even go up.
Quite possibly.
Oh, well, okay. This is not good news. Now, I guess
there's no good news anywhere in this.
No. Except the possibility that it won't pass.
Perhaps they want this all to really start falling apart by 2018. And anybody in an even purple-ish hued district or state is going to say, 2018. Yeah, no, I can't go along with that.
Yeah. Well, on the other side, we have Trump saying that if this thing does not pass, he will. His big plan is to make sure that
Obamacare dies.
Right, fails, as he says, of its own under its own weight. But of course, it'll just be him sabotaging it as much as possible along the way.
And then there's quite a bit they can do to sabotage it.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
but there's big Social Security savings in that too. So
there's
good news.
Yes.
All right. Well, I don't know. Now it's a wait and see thing. What kind of timetable do we? I don't even know where we are in terms of when will we start to see the hammer come down in terms of votes on prong 1 or prong 1 and 2.
It's supposed to be next week.
Okay. So by next week we'll really be in the thick of it. That sounds like a Thursday vote.
I think it's Thursday. Yeah.
Okay. When's their spring break recess?
I believe it's week after next.
Okay. So, maybe then.
So they'll want to get it done before people go home for recess and get beat up even more.
Yeah.
On the other hand,
right.
folks aren't going to want to go home and get beat up.
That's true. But they're now practiced at ducking their constituents. that was the point, I guess, of not for practice. Don't have town halls during your previous recess, and that way you'll be well practiced for ducking your constituents after you actually put the screws to them the week before. All right. So
speaking of which, this is the most ridiculous thing ever. My representative, Mike Simpson, did come home in February for President's Day recess.
Yeah.
But he hid out in a semi-posh Boise hotel for the whole week.
A hotel? So
yeah.
I assume he owns a home in the district, yeah?
He does.
He just
he does
go to
in
it?
Rigby, Idaho, but he was here in Boise. A friend of mine works at that hotel and saw him.
Wow.
All week.
So room service and probably...
And no town meetings.
Wow.
He must have, met with somebody, or why would he have bothered to come home? But he sure didn't meet with his constituents.
Does he have a family? Were they there?
He does. And no, they weren't.
Ooh.
Well, not kids. He's married.
All right, but okay, so the kids didn't come. Are they grown kids? I don't know.
They're grown kids,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, then that explains it. That's fine. Then saying anything illicit went on. It just, he was lounging in a hotel.
Oh, I think probably something illicit went on, knowing his reputation.
Oh, wow. Geez, I missed out on all of that story. Sounds interesting. It's a good way to spend a break. Yeah, he was on vacation, so he went to a hotel. What's the big deal?
Yeah,
Rigby is where all the French fry potatoes for Five Guys in my town come from. So I know Rigby.
Actually, Rigby, I don't think has any potato farms.
No? Oh, well, they must just be that's. Thank you for telling me that, because it says that on the board. That's probably was that maybe the corporate headquarters of where the potato company is? I don't know. It says Rigby, Idaho, every time. Now I'm pissed. I'm going to say something about that. And another thing.
I could be wrong. There could be a potato farm
okay.
there. I just don't think so.
No, maybe they moved it to a hotel in Boise, the potato farm. I don't know.
Sorry to take you so far off track.
These things, no. This is all in my wheelhouse. I appreciate it. Thank you, Joan.
You've got to get the Idaho gossip.
I like it. You can't get it anywhere else. That's a feature of this show. We can't get it outside Idaho anyway. I imagine it's all over the place in Idaho radio. But we would never know that unless you came and shared it with us. Thank you so much for doing so. And we'll catch up with you next week, at which point they might in fact be voting, or at least we'll figure out whether they're going to do it next week or delay it.
We'll be a week closer to whatever they're going to end up doing.
Right. All right. Well, we can't change that. Okay. We'll check in with you then. Thanks so much for bringing us up to speed for today.
You are most welcome.
Take care, Joan. Next week, then. Joan McCarter, our senior political writer at Daily Kos. Thanks again for coming by. It is time now to hand things over to the crew of the after show. Wink and Justice will tell you what else we missed after getting hung up on Snoop Dogg and Chris Arnett and other distractions to take you away from the real news. We were brought briefly back to that, of course, by Joan, who let us know what was going on in healthcare. What's up for Wednesday? Bannon and Trump have quietly installed an alt-National Security Council inside the White House that has a direct pipeline to white nationalists of the European right. That we had heard a little bit about, but an update on that. Florida ex-felons file suit that they have been unlawfully blocked from voting, and 6 years after the Fukushima disaster, cleanup costs edge past $188 billion, and there's more.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
I told you there was more, $188 billion in cleanup, but hundreds of wild radioactive boars now roam the streets of Fukushima. I think we could send some boar hunters from the United States over there. They love zombies and hunting wild boars. If you could tell them they were zombie boars, I think we could clean this up and turn it into a tourism attraction. What do you think?